The board got to go with Dr. Johnson to Portland to the OSBA conference this last weekend and hear her give her formal speech acknowledging her big award, and it was very exciting for all of us to get to be there for that. Well, not Doug, but almost all of us. We all are thrilled for you, Dr. Johnson. And with that, we move to public comment. Holly Haynes is up first. And I will just go over the rules real quick as you're coming up. If you wish to make a public comment, please complete a comment card prior to the start of public comments. If you're viewing online, please indicate that you would like to speak in the comments section. When you're recognized, please state your name and any group you're representing. Keep your comments to no more than 2 minutes. A group of visitors with a common purpose should designate a spokesperson for the group. If you wish to request that the board consider an agenda item, please contact the superintendent at least 1 week prior to the next board meeting. The board does not hear complaints against any personnel in open session. If you have a complaint about a specific staff member, please contact the superintendent or the board chair. And finally, inquiries will not generally be responded to immediately by the board and may be referred to a designee for reply at a later date. Go ahead, Holly.
Thank you. I did not receive any response to my questions and my request posed at last month's board meeting. First, I asked when and in what manner the district, through the Office of the Superintendent, gave notice and training on the new law, which makes mandatory reporters of all district employees when it comes to bullying, harassment, and intimidation. Second, I asked the board to consider temporarily suspending all non-AR rulemaking and handbook edits to determine compliance and to create an oversight process. I'm now asking if the board intends to actually do that. Here's one example why. CCS website links to the district's personal electronic devices in the classroom policy, but the middle school handbook, which still shows Mr. Sloper, by the way, says cell phone use is prohibited, but then that cell phones are to remain in the lockers from 8 to 3, but then says students may possess cell phones, but then says students who are permitted to possess a cell phone are prohibited from having it on active mode, suggesting that some students, but not all, are permitted to possess a cell phone. And then there are the mystery classroom rules referenced in the district's policy. We're not really sure what those are, but apparently students are subject to them anyway. And then there's the disciplinary component to cell phone violations. Third, I asked the board to engage an independent entity to review all disciplinary actions and disciplinary exclusions to evaluate their compliance with the law. I'm now asking if the board intends to do that. In an email from the current superintendent, she stated certain exclusions were not required to be reported to the ODE. When I contacted the ODE, they stated that was not accurate and they were quite concerned about this non-reporting, the deadline for which was prior to July 18th. They were also quite concerned about certain district procedures that violate a student's right to due process. Because certain disciplinary exclusions were not reported to ODE as required, and because the district continually ranks in the top 10% of disciplinary exclusions, and in fact ranked #1 out of all school districts in the entire state, demonstrating a curious and outdated culture of disciplinary exclusions, and because certain funding streams. May I continue for just 1 minute? Thank you.
Just like last time, just wrap up.
I will do that. Because certain funding streams are dependent on accurate disciplinary reporting and certification of that reporting, I imagine the board would be alarmed at all the possibilities here. Yes, I can request that this be an official agenda item to be voted on if necessary, but I suspect you don't want me to do that, not really. The optics of voting no to determine whether the district has a history of not complying with the law regarding disciplinary exclusions would be pretty bad. Finally, in case someone wants to take the CCSD top 10% or #1 disciplinary rankings and blame them on COVID, those rankings started showing up long before COVID. And in case someone wants to reference the recent gun incident at CCHS, all I can say is that at least those students were apparently afforded the opportunity for an expulsion hearing, so that's nice. I would appreciate an emailed response this time. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. If not, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Holly. Jack Ravenberg, come on up.
Thank you to all the board members, and to Dr. Johnson, congratulations on your prestigious award. Pretty exciting. It's also very exciting to see all the positive things that are going on in the Crook County School District. I, for one, still take issue with this board and the actions that have been requested. First one on my topic tonight is financial information. I go to the website and click on the financial resources page that's listed, and the most up-to-date financial statement is July. We're having a board meeting tonight where a financial report will be presented, and there's no up-to-date financial information for the public to have at their fingertips. And looking at it on the screens during the meeting is very difficult. So again, I would ask that financial information that's going to be heard or going to be referred to at board meetings be made available to the public, just like it's made available to each of the board members. In pursuing or talking to citizens between the last board meeting and this board meeting, we've had an election. A number of individuals in the community are a little despondent over the results of that election, at least as reported to date. I just say that just a recent library board meeting shows that people are still interested in the community, interested in our kids and protecting our kids. Over 100 plus people were at a recent library trustee meeting. And people need to realize that we're not going away. I was encouraged to read a recent post in Facebook, and I don't read too many encouraging Facebook posts.
Time.
Just, thank you. A recent Facebook post by Betsy DeVos, former U.S. Secretary of Education, referring to a post on Twitter by the National Education Association. Something I'm abhorrent to, but their post was, educators love their students and know better than anyone what they need to learn and to thrive. Betsy DeVos posted, quote, "You misspelled parents."
Thank you, Jack. Jamie Bauman.
Hello, board. I'm Jamie Bowman. My pronouns are she, her. I wasn't sure what to say tonight. I just anticipated some more anti-LGBTQ rhetoric from the so-called concerned parents or community members, so I figured I'd continue to bring compassion and accurate information to this meeting. Yesterday was World Kindness Day and also the start of Transgender Awareness Week. This week is one that's used to educate folks about the trans community globally and culminates in a worldwide mourning on Sunday the 20th of all the lives lost to anti-trans violence. The total number of lives taken is almost 400, and around 70 of those lives were lost in the US, many of which were children 18 years old or younger. How is this relevant to our schools? Because ignorance and hatred are at the root of this violence that is taking the lives of young trans people. It is the responsibility of a society to educate its citizens, regardless of age. People complain a lot about these subjects being taught in schools, and that is a direct contributor to the violence that trans and queer people face in this country. Imagine the world we could create if we focused less on removing information from our children's classrooms and focused instead on making sure that every child not only feels seen and valued in the place they spend 7 or more hours a day, but welcomed lessons that we didn't get the chance to have as kids ourselves. I'd also like to point out that the children who see their own life experience reflected in the books they read and lessons they learn learn more quickly than when they don't. And speaking of Kindness Week, it goes a long way for a child to be able to read about people that are unlike them and learn more about the other types of people that live in the world and practice kindness for those people. I guess what I'm asking is for the district to acknowledge weeks like this. Students like my kids who are fortunate to go to a school out of district that makes a point to be a safe haven for their community since they don't feel safe in this one, and to include groups like Prideville in their decision and policy making to ensure that no matter how many people show up to spread misinformation and eradicate inclusive education, LGBTQ students know that they are not collateral damage in the mission to create a harmonious relationship between the district and these parents. Thanks.
Thank you, Jamie. That concludes public comment, and we will move to the HDESD update. Any discussion? Okay. Then approval of consent agenda. Any motions or amendments?
Madam Chairman, I move to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We are unanimous in approving the consent agenda, and we'll move right into the superintendent updates. Dr. Johnson will start with childcare.
Give me 2 seconds to get my.
This is an update about our
Yes.
childcare initiative.
Yes. So as the board knows, we applied for 2 grants, and we have received $40,000 on the first grant, which will allow us to go ahead and start the work on the facility, which is the facility that's behind the high school that was used for childcare before. We're awaiting, or we're following the process for the next leg of the grant, or next leg of grants. And the next grant that we're applying for is $222,000 to increase our childcare capacity from 0 to 22. And we don't have a timeline on this. The next process is to do a more formal business plan and application. And we'd just like to thank the City of Prineville for their collaboration in allowing Caroline Irvin to be the person who is doing all of the work on writing this and then the communication work in the community. So it's good progress. We've secured 40,000, and now our target is really to open next fall when our educators come back.
All right, and then we will move to the reconsideration committee. We've gotten a request to reconsider some of our health curriculum, and that process has been completed. So Dr. Johnson's going to report back on her recommendation on that after the committee work.
So the committee made a very clear recommendation, and I am supporting the committee's recommendation. And I have before you, sorry about that, 5.2. The recommendation to follow the recommendation by the reconsideration committee to retain 1 video with restrictions as suggested and retain without restriction the other 3 videos. The video retained with restriction will have lesson plans written by our teacher as recommended by the committee, and those will be kept on site at the district office for anyone to review anytime they want to. Also, the other 3 videos retained without restriction, those are also available for people to view by checking in at the district office. There's a binder there that allows people to look deeply into the materials at all grade levels and to know what's being taught in the school.
Okay.
All of these videos were part of the 7th grade curriculum, is that correct?
They were a part, but when the new school year started, 2 of those videos were removed in the main, at the main site, so in the My Future, My Choice site. So they were gone, completely gone anyway. And then there's 1 video that will be modified and then 1 maintained. So there's really actually only 1 video still being used and 1 is used with modification.
Madam Chairman, I move to adopt the recommendations of the reconsideration committee.
Second.
Do we have 2 motions?
It's fine if you do. It's a good process.
Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We are unanimous. All right, Dr. Hoff, freshman on track and attendance reporting.
Chairman Ritter said I could use 2 slides, so it's going to be brief. So the Oregon School Report Cards came out mid-October. We've already reported on the English Language Arts and Math achievement data, but there were 2 metrics that we did want to bring to you, one of which we're very proud of, and one of which is a focus area for this school year. So starting off with our focus area, regular attendance. So this is last year's regular attender rate. So this is students that were present 90% or more of the enrolled days from September to May 1st. This is typically about 13 or 14 days for most students. Kindergartners start a little later. So we're definitely down. You can see there, pre-COVID, we were generally right around 80% of students meeting that mark. In 1920, the state suspended collecting data on it. And then in 21-22, which just came out, we saw a decrease where we're down to 63.9% of our students met that. Looking at the why behind the data, for the 21-22 school year, for the bi-weekly periods, we averaged 131 student quarantines per bi-weekly session. And if you think kind of on an apples to apples comparison, we had the most students kind of attending in person compared to more online options where online attendance is a little easier to meet. So that's why we believe that we're a little bit below than the state average. However, this is certainly a focus area for this year. Mr. Smith has his attendance teams that are making phone calls, student check-ins, letters. There's an interesting component to regular attendance where not all absence are necessarily bad. If a student is sick, we encourage them to stay home. There's things like college visits or if there's a family emergency. So we do try to take those all into consideration and make sure that our assistant principals who normally run this work are really working with families. The greatest intervention is a positive relationship with the family and engaging school. So we'll continue to focus on that, but this will definitely be a target area that we're continuing to work on. That was the bad news.
Can we possibly get an update after first trimester on how we're faring?
Great question. It's actually part of your board goals
That's
that
what I
you've
thought.
set, so we're already planning to give you that report. I pulled the data through November 1st just to see where we were at. We're at 71% of students are meeting that mark. So we'll continue to monitor that, and also, yeah, you'll get an update in January.
Madam Chair, Dr. Hoff, there was a legislative change which reduced the ability to use the courts to be able to do truancy courts. Does that show up in that data in 21-22 or 20-21?
I think 21-22, I think it was last year we got that word that we're no longer able to do that. That really was just the top tier of students, maybe 30 to 50 a year, but that certainly is one of our biggest methods to re-engage those very disengaged families. So I know Mr. Smith's also working with the courts on a follow-up on that, and we can report that in January. Let's move on to the measure. This is in your board packet. It shows the different student groups. Obviously, our homeless students struggled the most to get to school. Our TAG and Asian students were at the top of that list, but really make sure beyond these groups, it really comes down to the individual student and knowing what they need and are supported. Let's jump over to our historical 9th grade on track data. You'll see that blue line is Crook County High School, where 95.8% of students finished last year on track. The definition from the ODE is those are students who earned 6 or more credits before the start of their sophomore year. So the high school is at 95.8. The districts, that yellow line, they finished at 93.3, and then the states down there in gray at 82%. Some real positive things. I want to acknowledge a few people. Brianna Van Rokel, Jake Huffman, Michelle Jonas, and Jason Ritter were part of this team that were really working with those kids. There's a freshman on-track team that Brianna Van Rokel, they meet monthly. They have their own special tracker that they're making sure kids, students, and teachers know what the barriers are for students and are intervening as needed. Also, a big shout out to Mr. Huffman and Bree, who are running summer school programs. So as 8th graders come into their 9th grade year, there's a freshman camp where they come in and can earn, I think, a half elective credit. So that gets some of those tier 2, tier 3 students kind of a head start on earning credits. And then after their freshman year, there's also a number of credit recovery options. So we're really supporting those students who need it on both ends of the school year. So that's a huge contributor to that. One really good question that I'm sure you all are thinking is, hey, Joel, attendance is low, but freshman on track rate is high. That is misaligned. And I really want to credit our shift to shifting all our high school courses to Google Classroom so that even though students were gone on quarantine or family emergencies, they still were able to stay up on their coursework, as well as the summer school programs, I believe, contributed to that as well. What other questions does the board have?
So that one of my concerns is rigor, and that's been that way for several years. Are we increasing freshmen on track by reducing rigor? Do we have students that are passing all their classes but can't read or can't write?
We don't see any indication of that. We'll look at, as part of our board goals, we'll look at passing classes and whatnot. I know our teachers also hold a pretty firm line on whether they allow a student to pass a class or not. I would attribute this increase more to the support options have increased dramatically over the last 10 years as I look at this, where we're having more kids enrolled in summer school, these freshmen before they start their freshman year, as well as after they finish their freshman year. So I believe the increase is seen more to those increase in support rather than a weakening of the rigor.
And certainly moving to the trimester schedule has built in a little margin for error for kids.
Great addition. So, and that trimester schedule allows the opportunity to, I believe, earn one more additional credit. So that also helps as well. Good question.
Just one curiosity question. Why do we measure at the freshman level? I mean, obviously we want kids to be successful, but the risk of dropout is more at the junior level.
Yeah, really good question.
Why don't we measure all 3 grades?
I know the research around what contributes students to graduating. You remember, and I'd be interested in some updated research around this, but it was 3rd grade reading, 8th grade math, and then that freshman on track. For some reason in the educational research field, they identified this as a high correlation with graduation. So I believe that's why they started it. However, I would like to, I'm curious just to explore that even more.
It just seems like we would save a lot of work the senior year if we knew that at the end of the junior year.
Certainly. And we have 2 positions. We have a graduation coach, Mackenzie Kudlak, who does a lot of work for our students, their sophomore, junior, and really their senior year that are off track. And then we also have another position through a grant through the Central Oregon Health Council that works with those freshmen and sophomores specifically that are off track. So we're definitely, and I think this gets back to your question, the support level for these kids is so much higher. These students is so much higher than it's ever been, and that's what I would attribute this to.
Exactly. We continue to track these every year, but this is, I think, the biggest indicator of whether they're making graduation. Because if you're already off track freshman year, there can get to be such a huge hill to climb to get to graduation. Whereas, you fail a class your junior year, you probably have time to make up one thing. Go ahead, Sarah.
So successful school districts need to have what they call leading measures to tell where their kids are. And when you have a leading measure, you can still intervene. There's also lagging measures. And so if you're checking your juniors, you're measuring a lagging measure. It's too late to intervene. Same thing at 3rd grade reading. That's a leading measure. So it's concerning when your reading scores are low. And then that 8th grade transition is another place where you lose kids. So if you check them at the freshman year, you have a pretty good indication. The correlation is very high that they will make it to graduation. So if you want to improve your district, there's several places to invest. Early childhood, get every kid reading by 3rd grade, and then you check how successful they are at 8th grade, and then that freshman year.
I'd also just like to highlight one more thing, just to have a story to go along with this data. This picture you're looking at, that's the incoming freshman day, where you have this culture of welcoming, support, and success. So that's the student leadership kids and the teachers walking the freshmen through an aisle on their first day. Just building that culture of support from day one, I think, is super important for contributing to these outcomes.
Great. Leland Bliss with the construction update.
So I have two projects to talk about tonight. Pioneer High School, we're actually getting pretty close to being complete with that building. We hope to have it paved by the end of the week. There's a few punch list things that need to be done, and then we're ready for final inspections. So we'll start moving furniture into the school next week and hopefully get kids in there before the next board meeting.
So no date yet?
I'm a little nervous giving an exact date anymore. The sports courts, so there's been questions about what we built over by the sand volleyball courts at the high school. So we paved an area there that will actually fit 2 outside basketball courts. Back when we had COVID, we found a need that we needed outdoor courts. And our own Mr. Doug Smith drove to Northern Idaho University, picked up the hoops, brought them back here, and Rob Bonner arranged to have K-rails set up so that we could actually cordon off a place for basketball courts. And the kids really liked that. So when graduation came along last year and we had to take those K-rails down and move those hoops out of the way for the parade, during the summer, a lot of the students, they went back out and just moved the hoops out into the parking lot themselves so they could play basketball. So we decided, and we had funding, we were gonna go ahead and just pave a place and set those up. So that's what that big block pad sitting out there is. It's for 2 basketball hoops. All right, 2 basketball courts. So they'll be full-size high school courts.
Leland,
Yes.
are we going to do any higher fencing there, or are we going to be sending basketballs out into
Yeah,
the street?
we'll put a 6-foot fence up along Lynn Boulevard. We may leave the one on Fairground Road down low, but we'll also consider how when we set those hoops up, what's going to happen with basketballs. But yeah, we'll raise those fences up.
All right.
So just, I want to touch on Pioneer just for a second, because when we do get it done, we need to have an open house and allow the community to go in and see it. Just for everyone's information, it was paid for the building itself was paid for 100% by ESSER funds. There are some other funds that we use to buy the ground and some funding for some other things, but it was 100% paid for by federal government COVID relief funds, and they saved the community paying for that. What did we get from it? We got a brand new 6-room schoolhouse at the high school that allows our Pioneer students, our alternative high school students, to be able to participate in art, drama, all of the career and technical education programs that we house at the high school that they didn't have access to before. The other thing that it did, and this may be the most important part, is it freed up the south wing of the old Pioneer complex for elementary space. Okay, we're growing, we need more elementary space, and there are, I believe, 11 or 12 classrooms in that building that will now be free for our expansion of the Steens Pillar, which is that program has been exceptionally well received by the parents that have their students in that class, in that school. So I think it's important that when we do get it done, that we do have an open house of some sort so the community can go in and see it.
Absolutely. And that facility you're mentioning also houses all of GMH, our HomeLink program. So fantastic for so many of our programming options. Okay. I think that's it for facilities.
Okay.
Maybe we can have the board tour the Pioneer before our next board meeting if it works out. All right. Finances, Anna.
Okay, the finance report is in your packet. Our current projection for the general fund has a deficit in it. That's not unusual this time of year. But part of that has to do with just increased salaries and estimating because just don't have everything updated yet because of the length of time that it took to get the labor contracts finished. So a lot of these are still, a lot of the numbers in here are still projections. Just everything's a projection, but some of it's just guesses. So this deficit is financially tolerable because of the large balance forward from last year. But last year at this time, we thought we were going to have a deficit. So we just take 1 year at a time. Did anybody have any questions on the financial report? Okay, should I move into
Annual audit report?
the annual audit report? It's a, I don't know, 50-page document, something like that, and I emailed that out to each of the individual board members, and I posted it online. And if anyone wants a paper copy, I'm more than happy to prepare one. I didn't receive any questions from the board, but the audited financial statements per policy require board approval, so we're presenting that to you tonight for your consideration.
Any comments or motions on the audit?
Second.
All those in favor or any other discussion?
Aye.
Aye. No opposed? We are unanimous. As usual, Anna, you leave us nothing to even have to question.
That's my goal. No drama financials.
You can carry on with Budget Committee.
Okay, our budget committee has 2 openings, position number 6 and position number 9. Both are 3-year positions, so the board would just need to declare these openings. We then post the openings. All of the application and materials are online. And then once we have some applications, then we bring those forward to the board for appointment.
Okay, any motions on board position openings?
I move that we announce 2 3-year open budget committee positions, number 6 and number 9.
I'll second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? We're unanimous. So you hear that, folks? Join the Budget Committee. 2 positions are open. And the calendar adoption.
Okay, the budget committee calendar is presented in 7.4. It's very similar to last year. Most of these dates are just off by 1 day as the year, just as a new year. There is kind of a tight timeline in between April and May where I have proposed that we do our budget adoption in May. I often propose that, and sometimes we have to push it out till June. It just depends. But as long as we have a calendar prepared, then at least that allows us to go ahead and adopt in May, which is it's one of the few joys in accounting. So if you wouldn't mind approving that.
Any questions, comments, motions about the board budget calendar?
I move to adopt the budget calendar for 23-24 as presented.
I'll second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We are unanimous. And it was that quick and easy, Anna.
Thanks.
All right. Now we are on to school board matters. First up is the OSB board election. This is regarding our very own Patty Norris, serving on the OSB board of directors. Do I have any motions?
I move that we move that the Crook County School District support Patty Norris to position 3 of the OSBA Board of Directors.
Second.
Anything else? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Of course, we unanimously support you, Patty, and thank you for your service. And next up is the resolution to adopt the OSBA legislative priorities and principles, which we have been provided. Any motions or comments on that matter?
I move to adopt the OSBA legislative priorities and principles.
I'll second.
Does it need to say specifically support resolution 1? Is that all right?
Yes.
Okay. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay. And now we are up to the superintendent evaluation. This is something that we do annually, and we have provided the board with the rubric for making this evaluation. It is identical to what we did last year. We thought we finally understood how to do it, and we'd stick with it for this year. Our only request is that we have quarter points this year and not whole numbers, so that we can evaluate it.
If you want.
If you want. If you want. Because,
Quarter points?
well, Patty took
like
it upon herself.
0.25?
If you want, or a
Are you
3.5,
kidding?
or a 2.5, whatever you want to do, you aren't bound to whole numbers. You can do what you want, and then we will give them to Patty. That is the idea. And I believe we will have an executive session to go over those once we have them all returned. Patty, do you remember what date you're? November 23rd.
Yep.
There we go. All right. So that's just informational. There it is. Any questions? That's when Patty wants to accumulate them all so she can
The 23rd
tabulate.
of which month?
November, which is, yeah, a week,
Week and a day?
I think so.
And are we mailing those directly to Patty or to
Mhm.
Heather?
Either way.
So are they coming electronically? Quarter points, right?
If you want. You have freedom, Doug. Okay.
Tense, could we go tense?
I mean, you do what you want. No one's going to stop you. Get crazy. Okay. OSEA union contract is in your packet. This is the result of our classified negotiations. Any discussion or motions?
Yeah, from a discussion standpoint, I want to reiterate what I said when we were discussing the certified contract, and that is that I do not believe there's any difference between a 9-year employee and a 10-year employee, and that I find it ludicrous that our board is voting to give employees that have been here 10 years $1,000 and employees that have been here 9 years nothing, and that all employees are responsible for keeping this district performing at the level that it is, regardless of how long they've been there. And so I will be a no vote on this contract like I was on the certified contract.
I move to approve.
Sorry. I was on that committee, so I'll just say that there was discussion about doing some kind of bonus across all of the classified staff, and that the union representation opted for the longevity bonus as opposed to a smaller bonus that would be distributed over the whole class. So that is.
And I'm
that is how it was.
assuming that the negotiators all qualified.
Any other discussion or motion?
I move to approve as presented the 2-year contract between Crook County School District and the Oregon Schools Employees Association.
Second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
And motion carries with 4. And we will move to policy. That's what you've all been waiting for, I know. School board policies. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Madam Chair,
10.
I move we adopt 8.51, 8.52, 8.53, 8.54, 8.55, 8.56, 8.57, 8.58, 8.510, and 8.511.
Hey.
Madam Chairman, I had indicated earlier I would like to have some discussion about 8.56. So if you might want to not make that one, or you can't pass any of them.
We can amend.
You can discuss.
Yeah, go ahead and discuss.
You can discuss what's been moved. If you want to change it, we got to,
Yeah, that's what I want.
well,
So,
then you ask me to change my motion once we decide to change it.
Do you want to go ahead and discuss, and then we can amend the
We need a
motion?
second.
you don't have a second.
I'll second.
Okay, now go ahead, Scott.
All right, well, let's go to, sorry, I have to use this new little tablet they gave me and I can't find anything. 8.56 IK. That one there. No, it's not that one. Thank you. Okay. So the concern that I had on this one was this language that changes things from parents to families. I think the term families, I mean, I understand what's trying to be accomplished here and be open to the concept that it's not just biological parents. My concern is that the term families could mean my second cousin or somebody, depending on how broadly you define family. I think we have to be a little concerned about FERPA and the fact that FERPA is very specific to biological parents and those who have permission to be able to see a student's records. So I wonder if we could improve this with the insertion of some sort of definition of families if we're going to do this broadening language. The other one that I was concerned about in this same policy is number 7, where we are removing this statement, all teachers K-12 will list grading criteria on each course syllabus for each performance component required. I don't know why we would not have teachers specifying in their syllabi what their grading expectations are. I checked with Dr. Johnson earlier, and her notes seemed to indicate that there had been an alternate suggestion that somehow got lost in translation, and we ended up removing the whole section when perhaps we only meant to do a portion of it or something.
Pardon me, Scott. It's on 8.5 on the cover sheet under IK Academic Achievement. So there's just a problem on the actual copy of the policy that's in here. There's a misalignment.
Right. So I don't think that one's quite ready for prime time. I wonder if we could pull that one out and send it back for a little more work and then take it up at the next session.
Any other discussion on that one? And or an amended motion?
I move to pull policy IK out of the motion on the table.
And I can second that.
Any other discussion?
We have to vote.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? We are unanimous with those couple policies removed. And we move to school bond discussion. That's you.
Yeah, that was the amendment to the main motion. Now you're going to vote on the main motion.
Oh, we still have to vote on the first one even though we amended the second one. Okay. Vote on the first motion. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, can we carry on? Okay, now we good? School bond discussion?
Okay, so I originally thought I was coming here tonight to recommend to the school board that we go out for a bond in May. We had a meeting with our long-term facilities committee about 3 weeks ago, I think. And we came out of there with the concept of we've got buildings that need roofs. They needed roofs basically 10 years ago when we built this school. And what we did was we said we can get by for 10 years. So if you can get by for 10 years, you don't need a roof for 10 years was kind of my thinking. And so we got by for 10 years. They need roofs. We had the same conversation 10 years ago or 12 years ago when we built this building on the boilers, right? We can get by for another 10 years, so don't spend the money now. If you've got a car and it'll last another 5 years, you don't buy a new car, you wait till you need it. And so that was the conversation that we had. Those things were in the bond that failed in May. So we had a meeting and we said, well, let's go forward with the concept of just doing the roofs and the bonds and maybe a little bit of other stuff. And so we met with, there were quite a few from the public. I think 15, I think, is about what we had that were not school members, that were parents, community leaders, you name it, that were at that meeting. And it was interesting. Afterwards, I received a note, and I'm gonna read it. And I'll start by giving everybody an update, right? So your tax rate for school construction was 60 cents on your recent tax statement. I've got 10 acres next to my house, and the bill for school construction on that 10 acres was $2.58. The note says, when Crook County realizes what an opportunity they have before them, and that it is okay for Crook County to have the good, it is a mystery to me. I don't think there's a community so well positioned in this state to have the good than Crook County. Those who choose to seek support by looking backward and use fear to threaten our citizens' position bothers me. So I sat here and I got to thinking about it, and I said, can you, Doug, go to the board and recommend that we go out in May? And I said, well, first of all, I was really shocked where the Bowman Museum levy that was very, very small failed. And I thought, here we are, we've got a real challenge with education on what this bond is, because I'm not sure people realize how small the amount you pay for school construction in Crook County is. We're the lowest district in Central Oregon besides Crook County is double what is currently on our tax statement. And I always grew up that said, if you don't do preventative maintenance, if you don't take care of the equipment and the buildings and the things that you've got, you always end up with a bigger bill down the road. And inflation is greater than interest rates, right? So if you look at what's happened to construction costs since we asked for the bond in May, construction costs are up. I believe Redmond is now approaching $675 a square foot. Baker County was going to add a cafeteria to a middle school, and they budgeted about $4.5 million and put it out for bid last fall, and it came in at about $8.5 million. And they don't have enough money to build their new cafeteria and kitchen. And I'm sitting here going, well, how are we going to put on roofs? And we repriced the roofs and figured out they'd gone up about 20% since last fall. And I'm sitting here going, somewhere we've got to think bigger than just roofs and boilers. Because if we're going to be a growing school district, we've got to figure out how to make the investment, do the work that needs to be done to maintain what we've got, to take care of it, not to build the most fancy. I mean, you can look around. This is not the most fancy gymnasium in the world, but it suffices, and it's solid, and those walls are concrete, and they're going to be here a long, long time. We've got to figure out how to build that kind of needs so we can keep improving the participation, and the outcomes for our students. Because that's what schools are about. It's about students, right? It's not about teachers. It's not about anything else. It's about students. We've got, this board has done incredible things. We reduced the pay to participate fees for parents, that parents pay to have their students in after-school sports at the middle school. We reduced them to 0. Why? Because students that are involved have less disciplinary problems, they have better grades, and they're more likely to graduate. At the high school level, we cut those participation fees in half for the same reasons, right? And so while we sit here and we keep working towards how do we do it, we have this issue that says we also need to have the facilities to do it. Now, we'll figure out how to get by. My belief is where we're at is I'm not ready to recommend to the board, and I don't think our facilities committee is ready to recommend to the board that we go out for a bond in May. I think we're looking more at probably November of next year. And the other thing that I would recommend is that if you're a parent, if you're part of a family of a student, if you're a citizen, if you're a teacher, an administrator, or just a person on the street that you need to get involved in the next bond, you need to get involved in it. You need to figure out what it takes to support it. Don't be against it. Figure out what it takes to support it and what you're going to do to help pass it. Because it is crazy that Crook County pays 60 cents and Sisters, who's the next smallest, pays $1.28 a thousand, right? We have, our students, we have just as much right to have good facilities for our students. We have just as much right to have good facilities for our community to use as anybody else in Central Oregon or anybody else in the state of Oregon. And just because we're in little old Crook County doesn't mean we have to be second rate. We can be great. And we can be great and still be, this is the interesting part, we can be great and still be the lowest cost for school construction in Central Oregon. That's how, under the leadership, the work that was done by our businessman, what are you, the CEO, CFO now? But the work that Anna did with refinancing our bonds set us up for success. And the success is lower taxes. And now, if we invest that money wisely in facilities and preventative maintenance on those facilities, we're set up to be successful for 25, 30 years. If we don't, we're going to reach a precipice where we're going to have to spend $3 a thousand instead of $1, 3 times as much. So at that point, my recommendation to the board is that we allow the facilities committee to reconvene and rethink our ideas and bring them back to the board with some date other than May 2023 on the table. And I don't believe that even requires action.
Okay. Any questions?
And if you want to get involved, give me a call. Numbers published.
We will revisit that then, probably in the spring. All right. We're skipping that. And so now we need to set a date for an executive session to go over our evaluations for the superintendent. We're coming up to a lot of holidays, so let's bust out our calendars and figure it out. Heather, do you know a date that we need to have this completed by? Okay.
Few days.
Shall we look at the week of December 5th, 6th, 7th? Somewhere in there?
Could we do it the week before, like that 28th week? That's sort of a dead week.
I'm available.
Me too.
I could do the 28th. That's the only day that week.
That'll work for me.
Does
Works
that
for
give
me.
you enough time with Thanksgiving to actually tally it all?
Yeah, I'm not going anywhere.
Okay.
As long as everybody gets it in.
How do we feel about November 28th?
Oh, wait, I take that back. I'm going to be out of town.
Okay. How about the 29th or 30th?
Forgot.
Are you still out of town?
Yeah, the only day I have that week would be Friday.
Anybody have an opinion on December 2nd?
I feel like I have something that's not on my calendar.
That's a Friday.
Mm-hmm.
I don't
you're
do meetings
proposing?
on Fridays.
Okay. And we're
the
back
weekend?
to December 5th, unless you want to meet over the weekend.
5th is out for me.
That following week, the 7th would be the
How's the 7th?
I'm available on the 7th.
I'm not.
Current.
All right.
So there's no policy or rule that says it has to be done by December? It's a practice.
We could approve it in January.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Matter, we're modifying we already modified the contract.
It's just an evaluation that needs to happen every year. So do we
We're
want,
going to extend the contract.
and that's already happening next, and that's our next agenda item.
And if you have any advice for me, I'm always open. How to move it up a quarter point.
Do we want to meet after our next board meeting that same week?
Have it prior to our next board meeting.
Yeah, do executive session before the board meeting.
You can't, because you're out of town.
I'm flying as
Yep.
fast as I safely can home from Portland that day.
On the 12th.
So trying to get here early is probably not feasible.
We could do it after.
We could do it after.
After the board meeting, yeah.
That's fine.
We can do it after on that date, or we could even do it before our January 9th one, as long as it was done before our meeting.
So after on the 12th?
After the meeting on the 12th?
Yeah.
Okay,
Time efficient.
that's happening.
January 9th is the college football championship, just so you know, I'm going to miss it
Okay.
for the 14th year in a row.
Okay. We are going to meet after the meeting, December 12th. Okay,
I can do the 9th.
all right.
Wait, did we conclude we were going to do it
After our
the
meeting.
on the 12th? Or
Yes.
that we were going to do it sometime before the January?
After the meeting on the
after the
12th.
meeting.
Board meeting on the 12th.
Okay.
Okay,
It's going to be a really long day.
yes, it is.
I'll sleep in.
And the final item is the amendment to Dr. Johnson's contract. This is kind of a financial piece. Dr. Johnson is going to be able to PERS retire, and it makes no sense for the district to continue paying that 6% in if she doesn't need it. So she is asking to formally PERS retire and hoping to be rehired and extended through 2024. Do I have any discussion or motions?
Madam Chair, I move to accept Dr. Johnson's resignation dated November 4th, 2022, to rehire Dr. Johnson effective January 1, 2023, and extend Dr. Johnson's contract from June 30th, 2023 to June 30th, 2024 as Crook County School District Superintendent.
Any other discussion?
Just to be clear, we are accepting her resignation dated November 4th, which will be effective the end of the day, so December 31st, right?
Correct.
Correct.
No break in service.
Right.
No break in
And-
service. No.
And so the public knows what's going on, right? Dr. Johnson has elected to PERS retire at the end of the year. and we will rehire her as a PERS, which we're allowed to as a PERS retired superintendent through the end of the 2024 school year.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, we are unanimous. And that concludes our business. Our next meeting will be December 12th at Crook County Middle School, so join us then. And we'll be meeting in January at Crooked River. 8:06. You're welcome.
Nice job.